Hey everyone, very emotional day here in Israel. As you have no doubt heard, Ran Gvili, the final hostage of all the hostages alive and dead who are being held in Gaza, came home, a war hero, someone who fought to the last bullet. He himself killed 14 terrorists, and he was shot multiple times and kept fighting. He's a true hero from October 7th. He finally came home. That saga is over, and it raises the obvious question about what is next. So here's a clip from Reserve Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, former IDF English language spokesperson and now a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. He discusses what is next, and I have a lot to say about what he had to say. So after this clip, we will talk about it. Here's first Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus.
Welcome into our conversation, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserve Jonathan Conricus, former international spokesperson for the IDF, senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Conricus, for your time. So I want us to begin not with the headline nor with what is to come. Can you imagine? You can. What the soldiers on the ground who's been looking for Ran Gvili day and night felt when the message came in?
Yes, Shalom, thanks for having me. I can imagine what they felt. I don't want to imagine what they and their friends had to go through until they found the correct body.
Yeah. Yes, an entire army looking for the last warrior. As we said, all for one and one for all. That's the true Israeli spirit, if I may. All right, with the lack of a better phrasing, Lieutenant Colonel Conricus, what now?
Right, so when we look ahead, so this is, if we detach ourselves emotionally as Israelis, as people who care about the family deeply, and I join in the words that Jonathan said about healing, super important. We put that aside and look at strategic regional business, then I would say the following. This now allows, sadly, Hamas to claim, and for the Americans and the Qataris and the Turks to go ahead and say, let's move on to stage 2, because the missing body of murdered Ran Gvili was what stood in the way of that. Now that he has been repatriated, I think things will go ahead, and this may be a surprise, but it isn't looking good, because at the end of the day, we're going to see a Gaza Strip where Hamas will still have weapons. Nobody is coming to disarm Hamas. And Hamas will still remain either directly in control of the Gaza Strip or indirectly in control of the Gaza Strip. And that is a far cry from the number 1 and 2 goals that the Israeli government set forth to achieve, which is to disarm Hamas and to dismantle their political control over Gaza. Those are the 2 key goals that the Israeli government decided about a week after October 7. The third one has been implemented, to return the bodies and the hostages, but numbers 1 and 2 are not being implemented, and it isn't looking as if it's going to happen anytime soon.
So speaking of Rafah, yes or no, maybe, choose your battles, etc. Is this the battle worth taking?
I think you hit the nail on the head there exactly. Israel is choosing its battles, and I think Israel strategically, without saying so, is basically forfeiting total victory in Gaza, which is something that the Prime Minister promised and the entire political establishment promised, in order to achieve bigger gains elsewhere. And when I say elsewhere, I'm looking northeast towards the Islamic Republic of Iran. I think it's clear by this stage that Israel is not by any means achieving what it needs to achieve in Gaza for the short, immediate, and long-term future, but hoping that by agreeing to American dictates, recommendations, demands, you can choose whatever word, at the end of the day, hoping that bigger and better things will happen with regards to a much more serious and threatening enemy, the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I think that the State of Israel understands and hopes that it has a narrow once in a century opportunity to really change the security situation in the Middle East. And the only way of doing so is working together with the US. That is why the Rafah border crossing is going to be opened. I have no doubt about that. That is why we're going to go to stage 2, even though nobody is disarming Hamas. Gaza is forfeited, hoping to achieve things with regards to Iran.
So just to note what we're saying on the right side of the screen at the moment, police vehicles, the convoy bringing Rani Gvili back home for burial. Inconceivable images. And you've mentioned it briefly, Lieutenant Colonel Conricus. We will be getting further into this later in the broadcast, but using the opportunity, we have to speak with you. At the moment, Iran, and once again, Iran. What?
Okay, so let's talk about that. They move on to then talk about the Iran situation, which we will get to in later updates about Iran. But let's talk about what he said here. First of all, this is, as happy as we are that the hostage situation, the tragic, painful hostage situation is now over, it does now give cover to Hamas, to Qatar, to Turkey, to all of the actors on the other side of this to say, look, you got all your hostages back, time to move on to phase 2. And of course, they're now pressuring to open up the border, open up the Rafah crossing to both directions, which means that people are going to start streaming across in both directions. It creates a massive security problem for Israel. And as we saw from the World Economic Forum, from Jared Kushner and President Trump and the Board of Peace, everyone wants to now move forward to phase 2. And as Jonathan Conricus said there very accurately, this leaves Israel in a bit of a bind because Hamas is not disarmed and Hamas is still in control in the Gaza Strip, and it doesn't look like they're going to be disarmed anytime soon. Now, here's where I want to add some more detail to this and also talk about why it may not be quite the situation that Conricus is saying. Let me explain. So first of all, let's go back to Trump's actual 20-point plan and take a look at it, okay? So I think that's the best way to analyze this, is to see the 20-point plan in writing exactly as it was written, what was actually agreed to, and talk about where we are, okay? Let's start with that. So here is the 20-point plan. I pulled it up here from, you can find it anywhere on the internet. I pulled it up here from the BBC, but here's the exact text, okay? So let's start. The first 2 points in the plan are just kind of the overarching goal of what it is. Gaza will be de-radicalized, will be a de-radicalized terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors, and Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza. So that's the kind of thesis statement. And then here we get to what's called phase 1. Now, it doesn't say phase 1, phase 2, and whatever in the document, but you'll see how it works. So here's phase 1. If both sides agree to this proposal, the war will immediately end. Israeli forces will withdraw to the agreed upon line to prepare for a hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended, and battle lines will remain frozen until conditions are met for the complete stage withdrawal. So what happened was Israel withdrew to an internal perimeter, which left Hamas basically on the other side of that perimeter in control of most of the populated areas of the Gaza Strip, and Israel didn't withdraw from the Gaza Strip. In fact, it only withdrew from 47% of it. So Israel's in control of 53% of the Gaza Strip on its side of this internal border that is called the Yellow Line. Okay, now all military operations didn't really cease because Hamas started violating the ceasefire. There have been some skirmishes, but let's go with this. Okay, so Israel withdrew to this internal border. Then it says, within 72 hours of Israel publicly accepting this agreement, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. Well, that took a lot more than 72 hours. It took months. It just ended today. Once all hostages are released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after October 7th. Okay, Israel released those people. That was done early on, okay? Then, once all hostages are returned, Hamas members, now here's where things get sticky, okay? This is where the disarmament of Hamas gets mentioned. Once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. Okay, what does that mean? That means that if you have Hamas guys who are willing to give up their weapons, they'll be given amnesty. They won't be tried in court. They won't be arrested. They won't be killed. It's unclear what that means. And it also says that Hamas members are free to leave, meaning the assumption of this is that Hamas will be disarmed. It will no longer be there. It doesn't say anywhere who does this disarming, who takes the weapons from them. This is the big problem. Let's keep going. Upon acceptance of this agreement, full aid will immediately be sent into Gaza. So this is about humanitarian aid, and this already began from the very beginning of the 20-point plan. They began bringing in aid, and that's where it says upon acceptance of the agreement. So it's still part of phase one. This is all still part of phase one. Hostages are returned. Humanitarian aid resumes, right? Israel withdraws to an internal perimeter to allow for the hostage and prisoner exchange. And also Hamas members who are willing to give up their weapons, no one did. So we can still say, well, no one wanted to, no one committed to peaceful coexistence and decommissioned their weapons, no one left. So this is all still phase one. And then it talks about continuing the distribution of aid. That's also part of phase one, that's 8. And now here is where all the fun begins. Gaza will be governed under the temporary transitional governments of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of public services and municipalities for the people of Gaza. Now, this is what they've been talking about. If you've been following the news, that they created the Board of Peace and the Gaza governance group, and they appointed this guy who was a former technocrat from the Palestinian Authority to run the thing. His last name is Sha'ath, right? They appointed this guy to run it. That's this. That's what when everyone talks about phase two, they're talking about this. They're talking about point 9 in the 20-point plan, that Gaza is governed under a temporary transitional government of technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee, okay? And it's supposed to deliver daily public services made up of qualified Palestinian and international experts with oversight and supervision by a new international transitional body, the Board of Peace, which will be headed and chaired by President Trump, with other members and heads of states to be announced. That's what this is, meaning what we're currently in, what they've currently been announcing, Jared Kushner, World Economic Forum, Board of Peace, this whole phase two, when you hear that in the news, it's talking about this. Now, what's the problem with all this? Because if we keep going down in the proposal, and then goes on to talk about the economic development plan to re-energize Gaza and build a beautiful city, and it's going to be awesome, and it's going to create jobs and opportunities and hopes for the better future. Very nice. That's that whole thing that Jared Kushner was talking about at the World Economic Forum about this beautiful new Gaza. Great. That's the plan. Talks about an economic zone that'll be established. No one will be forced to leave. Very nice. But now look at clause 13. Hamas and other factions agree to not have any role in the governance of Gaza, directly, indirectly, or in any form. All military, terror, and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapon production facilities, will be destroyed and not rebuilt. Who's supposed to destroy them? Doesn't say. Keep going. There will be a process of demilitarization. Okay, who's supposed to do this? What does it mean there will be a process? How is that? Who? How? Right? Under the supervision of independent monitors, which will include placing weapons permanently beyond use. By who? Who's placing the weapons? Who's taking them from Hamas? Doesn't say. Through an agreed upon process of decommissioning the weapons. Really? Agreed upon by who? And supported by internationally funded buyback and reintegration program. What, you're going to buy the weapons from Hamas? They're going to sell them to you? Not happening. And this is all supposed to be verified by the independent monitors. Okay, very nice. This is where things get sticky. Number 14, a guarantee will be provided by regional partners to ensure that Hamas and the factions, meaning the other terrorist groups, Islamic Jihad, etc., comply with their obligations. Okay, who's supposed to do this? It doesn't say. And then it talks about the International Stabilization Force, which is supposed to be this new security force in the Gaza Strip. And then, it talks about how they're going to work together with the Israelis. Very nice. And then the withdrawal of the IDF. Remember, at this point in the plan, the IDF is still holding their position, controlling more than half of Gaza. There's not been any mention of withdrawal. You get down to point 16, and it says that Israel's supposed to then start withdrawing. The IDF will withdraw based on standards, milestones, and timeframes linked to demilitarization. Agreed upon by the IDF, the International Stabilization Force, the guarantors, and the United States. So this is what I think is going to happen next. I should say what I hope will happen next, okay? And this is, I don't know if I'm disagreeing with Jonathan Conricus or just adding to what he said. I believe that what has to happen now for Israel to have any security and any chance of success in actually getting rid of Hamas is that Israel must resist all pressure to withdraw its troops, even 1 inch. Okay, and because this is what we're going to see. I'm making a prediction now, and I'm 100% sure of this prediction. Okay, the prediction is that in the coming days, now that the last body was returned, besides the opening of the Rafah crossing to Egypt, we are now going to see ramped up pressure on Israel to withdraw its troops, to begin withdrawing. You're going to have the Arab side is going to keep saying, oh, Israel has to withdraw. Israel has to withdraw. Watch for it. You're going to hear it. It's going to happen. And remember, when you're talking to people about this issue, remember the Trump 20-point plan. Remember what it says. Withdrawal of the IDF happens way later, after Hamas is gone, after demilitarization has happened, and only when demilitarization is proven and is secured and is verified, and in conjunction with the Israelis, only at that later date does Israel withdraw. Once you have the International Stabilization Force taking control, right? Let's take a look at that one last time. That last point there about the International Stabilization Force. Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. As the ISF establishes control and stability, the IDF will withdraw based on standards, milestones, timeframes linked to demilitarization. That is the key. The key, again, for Israel not to end up in a situation where we once again have this terrorist state on our border threatening us, that we can actually get rid of Hamas, that there's actually a chance to destroy them once and for all, to remove their weapons. Israel needs to stand firm and not withdraw its troops. Wait for it. The pressure is on its way. Folks, again, a very emotional day in Israel. We should all be grateful to the IDF and to God that we now have Ron Gvili's body back. But at the same time, keep an eye on the international pressure that is sure to come. Folks, if you're enjoying these videos, please make sure to like and subscribe and all that stuff. And as I always say, go over to the Israel 365 channel and see the videos that we're putting out there as well.